Very excited to have a first-time guest on today's episode of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. That's coming up in about 15 seconds. I'm going ultra-fast intro today. Welcome to the show. I'm Dan Besbris. We're going to get some targets from our first-time guest because I like to see what everybody's looking at. You can follow Dan Besbris, me, on social at Dan Besbris. You can also follow the network at Old Man Squad, and it will, of course, follow you back. Please remember to rate, like, subscribe. I don't care what order you do that crap in, but whenever you do it, however you do it, that has been very helpful for us. So let's bring him in from the Sporting News, Sloan Piva. What's up, dude? And I'm so glad I asked the pronunciation of your last name because I 100% would have screwed that up. I don't want people to think I'm really smart. I just did 2 seconds of prep, but good morning from over here. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Dan. Thanks for having me. This is awesome, and thank you very much for asking for the pronunciation. Not many do these days, and everyone gets it wrong. So even one of my master's professors in college mispronounced my name when I was walking across the stage to get my diploma.
Oh,
talk about a fail.
That one cuts deep. You know, the thing is for me, like I have a weird Yiddish last name that no one ever gets right. Everyone assumes it's French, which is fine, honestly, because it feels more cultured to call me Bebri. So then I've gone through life like I've heard everything. I got to make sure I get everybody's name right. What's Sloan? And the people listening after the fact are not going to know what I'm talking about. But there's a wall of trophies behind you. What's going on back there?
Oh, that's just myself reminding me that I used to be an athlete. It's reminded me of the good old days about half my life ago. Some basketball. The larger ones are more recently from volleyball, which is a little bit more attainable for me these days athletically. And then there's some fantasy football on this side of me as well. So
nice. There you go. So it's hard to tell because, we do all of our things on little webcams now. That means that you're probably a tall individual. Am I walking down the right path here?
Yeah. I'm 6'3", so I guess that would be considered tall. Some of my friends are 6'6", 6'7", so I don't always feel tall, but I don't know what they put in the water down here in Dartmouth, Mass, but I'll take it. It makes things a lot easier. It makes, especially with volleyball, because I can't jump very high. So,
you just gotta reach.
I like to say that all I have is my height.
Sloan Piva, known for his standing reach. I'm going to definitely use that on future episodes of this thing. So we're doing targets today because the first time I have pretty much anyone on during fantasy draft season, and this one just happens to coincide with first time ever, I want to know who they're looking at. So I'm going to kind of I've been using the expression, put the wheel in your hands, but I don't care what, metaphor we use for this thing, or I'm probably messing up my grammatical nomenclature. You're in control is the bottom line. So Sloan, where do you want to go first? Who are you looking at on the current draft board?
Well, the guy that I'm looking at in most every mock that I've done so far, and the one actual draft that I've done, is Paulo Banchero. I just absolutely love him this year. I think people are sort of underrating how good he's been through the first 2 years. I mean, rookie of the year, all-star in the second year. There's only a handful of people in the past decade plus that have done that, and he's checking a lot of boxes. A lot of people worry about his free throw efficiency, but I think he's improved that markedly over the past year as well. He started off the first half of last season shooting about 70%, but then towards the back end of the year, he was closer to 80. And if he could be 80, that's really good. And it's not going to set you back too far. So if you can keep developing his 3-point shot and developing as a defender, I think he has all NBA ceiling for sure.
Is he someone that you're looking at more so in 8-cat points league? Is there like a particular avenue that you think makes the most sense with Paolo?
Yeah, so I basically always punt turnovers. I'm just one of those guys that just doesn't pay attention to turnovers, and it's worked pretty well for me over the past half decade. So I will never go away from that. And I often try to just pitch to my league mates that we should get rid of turnovers altogether, but they're too smart for that. They won't let me pull that. But yeah, I'll target him in my 8-cat builds and early and often.
When you're doing, and I'll take this down a small strategic path. When you're doing these builds, that is punt turnovers, excuse me. Do you Are you willing, since in your mind, you're already kind of treating it like an 8-cat league? Does that mean that you feel comfortable punting anything additional, or does that tend to be the only category you're punting?
Well, if I'm punting turnovers, I don't really care about punting blocks, but I try not to go too far down that path because then all of a sudden you're thinking about, wait, am I punting rebounds? What's going on with the field goal percentage? So I do like to still have a little bit of balance with the bigs. I've been also known to do punt points builds, which I dominate with, but those are a little less exciting to put together.
No, no, no. I love a good punt points. That's like right up my alley on this thing. The old man squad guys are typically dudes that are slightly lower turnovers, oddly enough, and then like don't score as well, because those things do tend to go hand in hand. The volume guys are usually going to be the guys who turn it over as well. There is nothing, Sloan, more frustrating for an opponent than losing to a punt points team. This is like one of the things that I'll go to the grave with. Like, I don't think anything has pissed off my opponents more in the head-to-head leagues I'm in than me beating them in the playoffs in like rebounds, steals, blocks, and the percentages or something like that. And they can't figure, they're like looking at the board going, how did I, like, my team has 1,100 points and his team has like 650 and my team has 300 assists and his team has 92. How did I lose this week? And it's this back asswards thing that sometimes pans out. But that's a hard thing to do on draft night, right? Because you're
Yeah,
like,
of
you
course.
got to get the guys, you got to get the like one or two volume guys that are really good for percentages, because then everybody else, you don't have to worry about that. If you don't get those dudes, it becomes kind of a hard build for head to head.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my most successful punt points build was a dynasty team that I took over for my friend Seamus's brother Dylan, who just didn't look at his team, and that's the worst kind of dynasty player, right? Just a
Come on,
guy that
Dylan.
doesn't do it at all, doesn't log in, and so I had to take over and sort of rebuild completely. And I always used to laugh because Seamus was the commissioner of the league, and he would always put out these power rankings at the start of every season, and I would always be at the very end of the power rankings. He'd say, your team stinks. And then I would somehow get into the playoffs. And then a year later, I'd somehow be in the championship. And now, I'm at the point where I've won a couple of championships in his league. And he doesn't say my team stinks anymore. He just says, I don't understand why
Yeah,
it's so good.
that's
I don't
exactly
understand why you are succeeding so well, but
that.
kudos.
That is it, man. That's the magic of the punt points team, is no one ever sees you coming because your team has none of those really buzzy names on it. And I'm not saying that that's the thing you have to do. There's like an avenue to this. You had a particular set of players that you had to sort of like work with to get to that right point. But it is a fun one, and it is very frustrating for the other teams and leagues. So for Paolo, let's talk a little bit more about Banchero, because I've been kind of afraid to go down that path. I don't typically punt turnovers. So for me to go down the Paolo path, I'd probably have to punt one or even both percentages. But you're right. If you look down the stretch last year, Paolo shot 78% at the free throw line. So that became less of a powerhouse negative. His big issues were turnovers, very high, and field goal percent was on the relatively low side, especially when you're thinking power forward. What do you think you mentioned like improvement? It sounded like you were looking more at free throw as something that could continue to maybe trend in that direction, or was it a number of things that you think could improve for him?
I think it's a number of things. I think he's just showed that he just continues to mature and continues to work at his game. I think there's good coaching down there, and I think they've the Magic have made a couple of pretty strong moves to build around him as well. So I think he can get to the line a little bit better. I think he can improve on his ball handling and his decision making a little bit. I just trust him to take those steps. I'm acting like I know the guy, but but I've been impressed by. I'm like kind of a closet Magic fan because of him, and I've really been impressed by his developments, and I think he can take another step forward. And I understand there's little room for error if you're going too early in drafts with him. You really need this pick to hit, but it's one of those Jesus take the wheel moments. Like I'm definitely going for it. I'm all in on Banchero.
I like, the Magic are fun because they're one of those rare teams that's winning by just locking people down and not like not getting lucky with it either. They just have a bunch of dudes that can defend the crap out of the ball. And they added KCP, who's actually another pretty damn good defender. Let's go to player number 2 on the Sloan Piva list. Where do you want to go next?
Well, I also love Jaylen Duren. Like I can't get away from him at all. I think he is just, obviously a walking double double. He's got a, rebounding, the chance to lead the league in rebounding. And if he can work it out at the free throw line and develop a little bit more as a shot blocker, which I think he can, I think he's just going to be too hard to pass up at his ADP. So I just love him. I'm going for him as wherever I can get him as well.
The Jaylen, yeah, I mean, you mentioned the blocks thing, so I'll play a little devil's advocate here because I think I can. And people that listened to my show knew that last year my hot take of the season was I think Jaylen Duren's going to lead the league in rebounding. He didn't, but he was like top 5 or 6 per game. So I'll give myself like a 40% credit on that prediction. People bounce off of him like a bowling ball. It's nuts. Like there's something special about him in that way. But Sloan, why? Why can't he block shots yet? Is that something you think could still come, or is this just who he is?
I think it could still come, especially with JB Bickerstaff in town. I mean, it's just a great coach who's got the experience with the quality bigs like Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. I really think that the best is yet to come with Duren, and I think that this team actually has an identity and a purpose now. So I think it's really going to help him thrive. I think that's just been a lost team with a lot of really good loose ends that just hasn't been put together yet. And he is the future at center for Motown hoops. So I'm all in on him.
Yeah, that was. I mean, that they just kept collecting veteran big men to try to trade off at trade deadlines, and it just wasn't even working. That was bad.
Comedy of errors.
Unbelievable comedy. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. I think Detroit did good things this offseason. Let's dig in a tiny bit further on Duren. 29 minutes a game last year. Do you think that could go up, down, or stay the same?
I sure hope it goes up. I mean, he's showed that he has the durability as long as he stays out of foul trouble. I think he can build on that, and especially if they're winning games and they're not trying to tank. Which, how long can one organization tank year after year? They gotta start trying to win at some point, or else they're gonna lose their entire fan base. So, I have hope for a 34 to 37 minute ceiling. I think 37 is probably not going to happen. That's a foolish thought, but at least 34 would be really good to see.
What was kind of weird with Duren too is the first couple months of last year, he was actually blocking 1.4 shots per game, but he was shooting 57% at the foul line. And then over the last 3 months of the year, he only blocked half a shot a game, but shot 83% at the foul line. Any idea of which of those things is real and which is the mirage on him?
That is kind of weird. It's kind of a befuddling stat, right? It's almost like maybe he was focusing so much on trying to be a better defender that he was, not focusing enough attention on his free throws, and then vice versa. I'm not sure, but again, that's something that I bet Bickerstaff can harness a little bit and try to get the best of both worlds. It's again a little overly optimistic at times, but these are my guys, and there's plenty of good bones with these players, and that's why I tend to go with them over like a higher floor type guy like Nikola Vucevic or something.
Can't blame you on that one.
I love it, Duren.
Where and I forgot to ask this on Banchero as well, but on Duren, where do you like him going? I think let me get this number right before I throw it out there. His current ADP, because I was just updating my board today, is 55.5. Is that where you'd look to target him? Would you go earlier? Would you hope that he falls beyond that? How do you feel about kind of the draft range for Duren?
See, that's the tricky thing these days, right? We're filming this in like early September and the ADPs constantly fluctuate, but I do tend to go like, at least top 50, maybe high 40s. I don't think I would delve too much sooner than that. It seems like it's all of a sudden not a value if you go too early, too much earlier than that. But I've been able to grab him in the mid to late 50s, plenty of places. So it's not like I'm trying to make him like the center of any builds or anything. But if I can get him at that level in the 50s, I'm ecstatic.
Before we get to your next guy, Sloan, what are you working on these days?
Well, so football season has started, so we're doing a lot of fantasy, a lot of betting at Sporting News. So back into that grind, but I'm also about to help the Athlon Sports NBA Preview magazine with their fantasy basketball coverage. I'll have about 8 pages in that magazine, so that's super exciting. An old school print publication in the days of the digital era. It's going to be fun to grab that and throw it on my friends' coffee tables and islands in their kitchens and stuff, and force them to read me. But it's really exciting. It's fun to get back in the game a little bit. It had been a little while since I did any like official fantasy basketball coverage for a magazine, so that was great. So watch out for me there, and obviously always on the Sporting News. So
that's awesome. At Sloan Piva, we're not done yet, folks. SLOANPIVA. Give him a follow on social media. Player number 3, where are we going?
Oh man, let's go a little deeper and let's talk a little Tyus Jones. I think the Suns really, really wanted to go out and get this guy because they did not want Devin Booker playing point. I think he's their first true point guard since Chris Paul, and I think he just exists perfectly, harmoniously in this Phoenix offense. And we already know that the assist to turnover stat is going to be named after this guy one year because he just year after year is number one in that stat. It's like 4 years running, maybe close to 5 if you consider that he was tied one year with somebody else. But he's just so efficient. He's a much better shooter than people give him credit for. I don't think he's going to get a ton of shots in Phoenix. But I think the assists are just going to be awesome, and he just doesn't do that many negative things to a team. And I just think people they're not thinking about him enough in drafts, and they're letting him fall too far. And then all of a sudden somebody grabs him really late, and it's going to be a real boon for teams if they grab him late, and he just serves as that cherry on top for a lot of different stat categories.
Yeah, you're not wrong that folks are just letting him go. He's an interesting one because his pre-rank on Yahoo is 96 and his ADP is 111. That doesn't happen very often where those two numbers separate by that great of a distance. Usually one pretty closely reflects the other one. And for whatever reason with Tyus Jones, it's not happening. And even if you look at like the transaction trends, and I know that not that many leagues are open right now, but Tyus Jones is one of the most frequently dropped players in transaction trends right now. The scant few leagues that are open, people are just like, nah, I don't really want to deal with this one. Why is my question? Why do you think that is?
I don't know. He's unsexy, He's not a guy that creates off the dribble, and he played behind Ja Morant, was one of the most exciting players with the ball in his hands. And Tyus just came in and just didn't do anything wrong. He didn't really turn heads. He didn't dazzle, but he also did everything that he did was really good. He was good with assists, good with steals, good with free throw shooting, pretty good 3-point shooter. I think the problem is that, it goes back to that, fact that people hate points builds. They just want the sexy players. They want the guys that can drop 30, and Tyus won't drop 30 more than maybe once or twice in a 5-year span. So, but I am fine with a guy getting 15 assists for me one night, or grabbing 3 steals and hitting a couple of timely threes and just not killing my percentages, even though he has such high, ball in the hand usage. So I'm fine with the unsexy guys. I embrace that as a fellow old man. I'm who is certainly not sexy. I'm all about
Hey, now.
Tyus Jones.
Don't be so hard on yourself, man. And by the way, I've had to not this has nothing to do with what you said, but someone was asking me on Twitter. They were like, "Do you have to be an old man to be a part of the old man squad?" No, absolutely not. It's the fantasy teams that I'm drafting. It's not the people. I mean, okay, so today maybe we're a pair of old men, but like anybody is welcome in the old man squad. You just have to draft old men in your NBA league. That's the only real requirement around here.
Yeah.
So
Well,
back to Tyus.
we
Yeah,
have two. We both have two kids that are yours are 7 and 4, right? And mine are
yeah.
5 and 2. So my kids remind me regularly that I'm about to turn 40 and that I do a lot of old man things, like shake my fist at people that are racing down the road too fast, and maybe do a Tony Soprano and walk down the stairs in a robe and my boxers. A couple of comments from my 5-year-old about how I have a big belly. Like, all right, thanks, Ellie. Thank you. Thank you for that.
We are on strikingly similar pathways here because I'm 41 now and my kids are 2 years older than you. So it's like, man, you're looking into the future and it is ugly on the other end of this Zoom
They
call.
are candid and harsh at times, but it's good. Keep us in check. Hold us
That's right.
accountable.
Yeah, someone probably should, I guess. A little bit more on Tyus Jones. Can he get anywhere near, you think, what he did last season? 12 points, 7.3 assists, over a steal, 1.5 threes on excellent percentages. Obviously, very low turnovers. Somehow he did 7+ assists on 1 turnover a game last season. Or so last year he was behind Kuzma, he was behind Jordan Poole. This year you've got KD, you've got Booker, you've got Beal. Does that worry you in any way on what could get shaved off of him?
I think the points will get shaved a little bit. Like I said, I think that the shots, there's a lot of players and there's not a lot of balls in Phoenix, so it's possible that the points go down but the assists go up. So I think you should be a little wary if you really need that back end points boost. Maybe you're comfortable in assists and you think maybe I shouldn't go for this guy just because that old man said Tyus is awesome. Shy away from him if you need the points, because it's very possible that he finishes in single digits. It's actually probably likely, but like I said, it gives you that boost in the other categories, the ancillary cats, and that's where I'll be targeting him and builds that will need that complement late.
Yeah, I mean, it makes total sense too. And it's interesting how few people, and I want to get one more guy from you before I let you go, but it is interesting how people have turned on him after a really good last season. And we also hear about how scarce the assist category is in fantasy. And it's true. It's one that gets scooped up a lot in the early going. And, people go early on Darius Garland because he's an assist guy, but no one seems to want anything to do with Tyus Jones. So I'm glad you brought him up. He's someone, honestly, we haven't talked about very much on this podcast. Sloan at Sloan Piva. Give me one. You got one more before you go, or are you out of time?
No, I got one more. As a matter of fact, I'll give you a 1-2 punch. Two Warriors that I think landed in good situations. Buddy Hield and Brandin Podziemski, which I still struggle to pronounce. It's no matter how many times I try to look at that phonetically, it's difficult for my head to get around. But I think they're both just going to have such an increase in usage from last year to this year. Hield will just work really well next to Curry and in Steve Kerr's offense. And Pods should be starting for that team and should, by all accounts, if you look at his per 36 numbers, should take another step forward volume wise in many different ways. So I just really like both these guys. I think the Warriors are going to be a lot better than a lot of people think, and they are 2 reasons why.
Do you think what do you think Hield's role is with that team? Is he starting or coming off the bench?
I think he's coming off the bench, which is fine because Curry will probably stay out there for a few of his minutes, and then Draymond will play some time with him as well. But yeah, I think they'll get him his shots. He moves well without the ball, and if a team is confident in him and believes in him, then he thrives. If a team doesn't have a role for him or doesn't understand how to use him, then he struggles. And just like Al Horford went to die in Philly, Buddy Hield went to die in Indiana and Philly, and he's not nearly as bad as a player as one might think from watching his past two stints. I think he's still really good, and you just have to understand that you're not going to get a ton of other cats, but besides the points and the 3-point production, but he's still going to shoot really well from the free throw line. But yeah, if you really need defensive stats, or you don't think your team can take on many dips in field goal percentage from a player like him, then maybe don't take him on. But if you need the help with 3 pointers, I think he's definitely a good target.
Is Podziemski, because he's one that I've struggled with a little bit to get a perfect read on. I'm trying to think of the right way to ask this question too. Is some of the fun with him because he's one of the rare players this season whose role we know is going to increase, and we just kind of don't know exactly what that end result is going to be. And because he's going late, like that's the definition of a what could this be kind of pick. Is that, am I close on that one, or is it something else?
Yeah, and I think just hearing what we're hearing about him, how much they like him and how much they want him to shoot. They want him to take so many threes, and shot over 38% from 3-point line last year, and Golden State definitely knows how to get people open from three. And then per 36, like I said, he's 12.6 points, 7.8 rebounds, 5.0 assists, 1.1 steals. I'm like squinting because I'm so blind, and 1.6 threes.
That old man right there.
1.6 threes and per 36, and that's with Clay in town. So it's tantalizing to think about what could be. I think many people are probably going to think that he's going to end up with better numbers than he will, but I have trouble staying away from him in too many drafts because I think the possibilities are very strong. He's a high IQ player, and it's just a guy that again, Kerr is just going to be all in on and just really help him develop.
Last question. Where are you looking to draft these guys, Hield and Podziemski?
Oh man, that's a good question.
That's what I do here, baby. Good questions.
I mean, late. I'm not gonna take like any huge risks or reach too high for them. I think they're like appropriate my guys if you can get them at value. So I'm not gonna name an actual number right now because I don't even have them written down. But yeah, I definitely will get them if the time is right. But also not going to have my heart broken if I don't land them on every team.
That's fair. Sloan, that's it. I'm not going to force you to go any farther on this one, mostly because I want you to leave the experience thinking, that wasn't so bad. I could do that again. At Sloan Piva on social media, he is with The Sporting News. That is The Sporting News. There's a definite article on the front of that bad boy. Sloan, thank you so much for coming on the show today. I'm so glad we finally got to do one.
Thank you, Dan. It's been a pleasure. And anytime you want to commiserate with each other about being old men, I'm happy to do so.
Yeah, I'll send you a DM the next time I'm awake in the middle of the night with stomach problems.
I'm with you, man. Thanks a lot.
That was fun. That was a blast. Sloan is awesome. He's someone that I've talked to on the interwebs many, many times, and really cool to get him on the show now. Again, you can follow his work at The Sporting News. He's working on all that fantasy stuff as well at Sloan Piva. Piva is the last name. Sloan, you guys can probably figure that one out, but it's Sloan as I threw some words on this Monday. I'm sleepy today. So on that episode, I was joking about being awake in the middle of the night. I very much was awake in the middle of the night because I overate yesterday at my cousin's 40th birthday party. And I'm a freaking old man who drafts old men. And such is my cross to bear, I suppose. Quick recap on Sloan. He's into Paulo Banchero. You guys know I'm not as much, but I think it's always really fun to hear reasoning on how guys could potentially fit. And we had Adam King on the show a couple of times, who's also into Paolo this year. So again, like more than one way to skin a cat. Who the hell was the second player we talked about? How did my brain already fart on this one? Oh, Jaylen Duren, who, I mean, you guys know, I adore, and literally the only reason I watched any Pistons games last year was to watch similarly sized humans ping off of Duren like his body was made out of some sort of weird metallic alloy, and they were just boom blowing off of him. And again, like the 29 minutes, some of that was because he had the ankle stuff, and some of that's because they were terrible. He is an interesting cat because if the blocks come around, and we don't know, like I don't know that. For me, it's one of those things where I don't want to bank on it happening, but if it does, in addition to a minutes jump forward, that's how he really takes a flying leap. Tyus Jones is one that I don't know why I haven't talked about him more. I think maybe I have some fear about like Grayson Allen cutting into his time because they're going to be fighting a little bit, and then Royce O'Neal, and like does Beal play some point guard? But like if Tyus Jones is out there for a half an hour, he's going to get assists because the guys around him are just freaking good as hell at making buckets. So he is an interesting source of assists late. And then with the Warriors, like a lot of people keep telling me I'm wrong on Podziemski. And Sloan is another person today that told me I'm wrong on him. I'm worried about Podziemski mostly because he's not a great foul shooter and his field goal percent was kind of rough. And the steals are okay, but didn't really block that many shots. I don't know if he's built to be a scorer. But at the same time, and I was thinking about this on my, and this is how troubled my brain is. I was literally thinking about Podziemski on my drive home from dropping off my younger kid at TK at preschool today, and I thought, what am I missing on this? And this is honestly, this is what all fantasy analysts should be doing. Like, I live and I breathe this stuff 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's problematic, mind you, because I should probably be focused on other things. But this time of year, this is really fun. And so, like, if I'm going to screw 9 to 5, this is a 9 to 8:59 the next day. It's every moment of every day. So as I'm driving around, I don't listen to the radio. I don't listen to music. I'm maybe a little bit of a psychopath. My car is quiet and I just think about stuff. And today, and it's for a couple of reasons. I've had a few people on the show that have said you need to be more bullish on Brandin Podziemski. I did that Warriors show, and folks were telling me I need to be more bullish on Podziemski. Now the thing is, I actually think he's going to be a really good fit in reality for the Warriors. My question mark isn't about Podziemski's reality fit. It's about how does it translate over the fantasy side. But the thing is, when you kind of when you look at the numbers on Podziemski, his ADP was 133 and a half. I'm filling in the new ADPs because I do it every Monday. I don't know what the exact number is right now. I'm guessing it's still relatively close to that. The other guys going in that range, which is effectively the beginning of the 12th round, if that number is still relatively tight, are like Malcolm Brogdon, Jordan Clarkson, Scoot, Jaime Jaquez, Andre Drummond, Stephon Castle, KCP. And I can make an argument for KCP as a guy who's going to be a high floor, low ceiling, like fits on a lot of teams because you took a risk earlier on. And so you got to just make sure that you have this useful guy. But as you look at the rest of those guys, or most of them, like 90% of them, very few have the mystery box element that Podziemski has. And this is what I was thinking about as I was driving home. I was like, okay, well, what if, like, I'm doing okay, Brandin Podziemski was bad in both percentages. He has some holes in his fantasy game. All that stuff is true. And so that's why I've been kind of down on him on the fantasy side. It's why he's not a guy that I've been targeting in the 11th round or honestly, even the 12th round. But then the flip side of that is, what if some of this stuff clicks? What if I'm wrong? What if he does go take 8 3-pointers a game like the Warriors have claimed that they want him doing? What if that's the thing that happens? What if his free throw percent improves dramatically year over year? Most of these other guys don't have a what if. Jordan Clarkson is getting drafted in that range. There's literally no what if with Jordan Clarkson. We know exactly what that dude is. Same thing with KCP. I should use them both as an example. Jordan Clarkson is a guy who has zero what if, but I want nothing to do with him in fantasy because his game doesn't translate at all. KCP, there's no what if at all with KCP. I happen to like him more because his game does translate a little bit better to fantasy, but there's no ceiling. There's no what if. the what if guys dry up typically. So the we know you and you're pretty good guys are done by 95. The we know you and there's a chance you might be kind of good usually dry up by about 115. There's like 20 of those dudes. After 115 in a relatively competitive draft. Now, if you're in a full beginner draft, you might be able to get good dudes all the way to 130. But in a relatively competitive draft, after pick 115, you're into what I've referred to on this show as some farts. And if you're comparing the fart guys, why not Podziemski? And this is I only had a 7-minute drive home from preschool. So that's about as far as my brain got. But that's where it landed is, am I being needlessly curmudgeonly about Podziemski, thinking I know what he's going to be this season when I don't? So I'm going to reflect on that. It's my job as an analyst who talks and screams into the void often to reflect on things that I'm doing, maybe more out of instinct. Is he more, and look, I'm going to put all my buckets together. I've started to do it. It's still very much in its infancy because weekends are busy. And that'll be all out there. It's just all on that same free Google sheet. You guys can see it. It's got the pre-rank information from Yahoo. It's got ADP information that I'm filling in every week. And it's going to have the buckets as I go through basically everybody pre-ranked through about, 180 or something like that. And I'll slot them into buckets. And Podziemski will probably get slotted into a bucket that's maybe doesn't, perhaps it reflects the sort of low floor, higher ceiling kind of thing that I often gravitate away from until you get late enough that it makes sense. Anyway, I didn't mean to have a 6-minute philosophical rant at the end of this episode. I mostly just wanted to tell you that Sloan is awesome, and I'm really grateful that he took the time to come on the show. But kind of got me thinking a little bit, where am I being too much of an ass about some of these guys? And the answer is yes. And, that's a little bit of a reason that I wasn't in on Scotty Barnes last year. That's one of the leapers that my style of fantasy misses. But I'm not that upset about that one because he would have taken a 4th-round pick last year. I think he went around mid to late 40s or something like that. We got the Tyrese Maxey jump and we got the Chet Holmgren big year. And so we had plenty of wins. Missing out on Scotty Barnes was not the end of the world for us. But there's a difference. I don't like to spend early draft capital on a what if. Scotty Barnes was a what if that worked. Usually there's 7 or 8 what ifs in there that don't. At the end of a draft, you got nothing to lose. So I need to be less of a curmudgeon about end of draft what ifs. Lesson learned episode in September instead of April. Follow Sloan on Twitter at Sloan Piva, P-I-V-A. I'm Dan Vespers for the Old Man Squad, at Old Man Squad, at Dan Vespers. Please hit like if you enjoyed hanging out with Sloan today. Comment. Feel free to leave a comment on the YouTube video. If there's a question, I usually get back to them within 24 hours also. So it's kind of a good way to get a hold of me. It doesn't get buried in the Twitter mayhem. And rate and subscribe if you have a moment. Subscribing, obviously, the easier of the two. And with that, I take my leave. We will have a show later on today. There will be an afternoon episode of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball, and I'm debating between a couple of, I think, really fun topics. One related to the ADP changes happening this morning, and the other I will keep in my back pocket. That's a mystery show, but maybe it'll be coming in a couple hours. In any case, thanks for watching. I'll see you soon.